Well, tonight is going to be a hard one to say we need an introduction, but it is the silly season. We are right in the middle of selecting who we want to lead us going forward. My hat is off to everybody that comes into Milford government as a volunteer. Some that never leave, have been around a while. So, I mean, I hate to do this, but we'll start with an introduction. There may be somebody out there that doesn't know who you are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my name is Brian Murray. I'm the chairman of the Milford Board of Selectmen right now, and I'm seeking re-election. I suppose I'm one of those people that's been around, hopefully not around too long. I don't want to wear out my welcome. But, you know, I'm running again for re-election because, to be quite honest with you, working on behalf of the town of Milford and serving the town of Milford is very important to me. I mean, it was something that was ingrained in me going back to my grandparents that, served in this community in the early 1900s. My grandmother, Mary DePasquale Murray, was the first teacher in the Milford school system of Italian descent, and of course went on to be Democratic State Committee woman and very, very involved in things. My grandfather, whom I never met, was also very involved. He was a district court judge, and prior to that he served as town council to the town of Milford for many years. And of course my parents, both ingrained in me, I think the importance of trying to do things in the community. So it's something that, I've been involved in and worked on various projects and issues over the years. And it's been now, Al, when you talk about it, I came back from law school in 1985, and the first thing that I did was become a town meeting member. And that's how I learned things. And I've been doing things since. So if you use that barometer, I've been involved in local issues and local government for over 30 years.
Brian, I start every show when we talk about people running with a basic question. And I end, as you know, because you've been here a few times, with the same question. Brian, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Well, I mean, I would answer that question by saying that, I've been there and I've done the job. I've handled a myriad of issues that have come before the town. What I try to do on anything that comes before me, whether it was as a member of the school committee or now as a member of the Board of the Selectmen, I try to learn as much as I can about the issue. I try to get as many sides, points of view on the issue. I think I try to make a responsible and reasonable decision that's in the best interest of the town as a whole. I'm not really interested in making political friends. I just think that, what needs to be done is what's in the best interest of the town. And that's what I've always done, and that's what I'll continue to do.
When you look forward, what do you think are the three biggest challenges our town faces?
Well, right now, and I've said this before, I think the biggest thing is, Milford is really facing an economic and almost a cultural change with the advent and the tremendous growth of the Milford Regional Medical Center. Many years ago, Milford was known as an economic engine through its granite industry. After that, the shoe industry was very big. Of course, Draper over in Hopedale was a huge economic engine. I think EMC has kind of filled that gap, not necessarily in Milford, but certainly within our region. Well, right now, we have that major employer in the town of Milford. So it's obviously the medical center for southern central Massachusetts. People come to this area for excellent medical care. Partnering with Dana-Farber, I think, was a tremendous, tremendous asset to the town. It's our largest employer. So I think what you're going to see develop along that Route 16 corridor is those houses, those residents that have been there, they're going to leave, and they're going to be replaced by, I think, ancillary businesses for the medical center. And when you look at the Longwood campus in Boston, when you look at what Worcester Memorial is like in Worcester, I think that's the vision of Milford going forward. And I think, that's a tremendous, tremendous asset to have in your community, that medical service business, because you're going to get the spin-off with doctors' offices, physical therapists, medical supplies, pharmacies. You're going to be attracting a whole lot of new people into your community. Hopefully they're going to be using restaurants, stores. So I think the expansion is just going to, grow from that. I think facing that kind of growth, it's very important, I think, to have responsible, educated, and very reasonable leadership on the issues that are going to come forward, whether it's infrastructure, businesses, real estate. So I think it's very, very important who we have as town leaders in the next upcoming years, because these issues are going to confront us very, very fast. You talk about three, to me, Al, I think a very close number two is going to be fiscal discipline. Now, it's no secret that the town of Milford is in very good shape financially, and that's as a result of a lot of hard work by a lot of people. And I'm going to pander to you and say, you do a very good job on the finance committee. You've been there for a long time. You do a lot of hard work. And that's not to say that we've agreed on things all the time, nor I think should we have. But
That's what makes the whole system work. You don't want everybody,
I think so,
having the same opinion.
Absolutely. That's the kind of discourse that you need to have. So, I think the town being in that financial position is enviable. It's great. It's the result of a lot of hard work. I think the problem right now is going to be to restrain the giddiness. And it's going to be awful easy to spend $300,000 plus for an HR department that I don't know that we need. $200,000, for a tech department that maybe doesn't have to go that far. Whatever the issue might be, certainly there are a lot of worthy things that come before the Board of Selectmen, and I think it's incumbent upon the members to use good sense and still be very fiscally responsible. That's harder than you think, knowing that you have the financial resources if you need to. So I think it's really going to be a challenge for whomever's in the board in the next few years to exercise real restraint in terms of spending, because things can change in an instant. And state aid could get drastically reduced. There could be another unknown out there that hits the budget. So it's really going to be incumbent, I think, upon all town leaders to be really fiscally disciplined.
Well, that's the biggest worry, because we came off of kind of not a perfect storm, but 2 out of 3. One, I think people don't really understand that, at the beginning of the year, we're always saying you got to be disciplined, you got to be tight. And then, you had $2 million surplus at the end. And I sit there and I say, but guys, we budget to 97, 98% efficiency. Well, if we end up with 3% left over of almost a $100 million budget, that could be $2 or $3 million.
It certainly could, and as you know, that number is not 100% reflective of budgeting. Going into the process, we really don't know what the commercial new growth is going to be. We can take a guess, and we can project, and we can kind of think, but if that number comes in larger, or significantly larger than what's originally budgeted, well, bingo. Obviously the revenue side is up, and that's going to lead to your excess levy. So I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, and I don't think it ought to be adversely reflected upon the town departments in terms of spending. I think the key is what the town does with the financial windfall. And I think that, certainly, I think back, the years I've been on the board, I think the town, the selectmen, the finance committee, now we have a finance department, which I think even consolidates things a little better. I think we've been very responsible in terms of allocating that very fairly, portions of it to reduce the tax rate, which certainly helps taxpayers, portions of it for capital expenditures, portions of it to reduce debt. So I think it's been a very balanced approach by all of the different entities that's kind of brought us to where we're at.
But there are a lot of programs. You know, we had the chief and Amy Leone come on, talk about if we could hire 3 or 4 people, we could save lives. You've got a group coming saying this bus loop, and I want to go through some of these later on, but how do you say no? You know, when you see the impact it can have on seniors, on, you know, handicapped people, but then you turn around and say, okay, this is a tight budget coming our way. And we knew it, because we did Woodland with no override, no debt exclusion.
Which is amazing.
It is.
$61 million plus school, reduced state reimbursement on it, no override, and we've got, you know, excess levy. That's absolutely amazing.
Look next door. People are getting presents of $500 a year tacked on to their annual tax bill for a school.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we said for 2 or 3 years, and it starts in 17, it's going to be really tight because that Woodland debt's going to come. And until we take some of the old debt off. But how do you look at somebody? I mean, I don't envy the selectmen, because you're kind of the first responders to these ideas.
Well, I mean, you know, in actuality, there's really a minimal amount of budgets that we have actual control over. You know, the general government budget is quite small. I think it's only about $4 million. You know, the police chief, you know, he has his budget. The fire chief has his budget. Yes, they are under the Board of Selectmen, and we work with them. But, you know, in terms of these other types of programs, you know, coming forward, you know, again, I think we have to keep in perspective what the role of the Board of Selectmen is. For example, the opiate type counseling that you're talking about, or even the public transportation. Ultimately, it's going to be the town meeting that's going to be making the decision. So our responsibility as leaders ought to be put forth the best, most accurate, complete information that we can. I think if we feel strongly about an issue, certainly recommend one way or the other if that's appropriate, and get that information to the town meeting. Allow the debate, allow the town meeting to make a responsible, informed decision.
But the selectmen, I mean, we get to cop out as FinCom, because I laugh and I say, I think the FinCom is some of the most influential, powerless people in town hall, because we don't even get to vote. We get to make our recommendation, because we have to have a balanced budget, and we recommend it to 3 people who stand up in front of the town meeting. So, you know, you really do have to sort of take a position on these, because you couldn't just go in saying, you know, I give it an 18 and we dance to it or something. You know, I'm not going to tell you, is it going to impact? You know, the police chief, 94% of his budget is people. So if you try and cut 10% out of his budget, there's not enough supplies.
Sure.
You know.
But, you know, the police chief, you know, just as terms of an example, and the department has been, I think, very efficient in terms of realizing grant opportunities. He's done a great job with technology in the department by way of grants. He does a great job in terms of the drug recovery money. He's got a very, very strong relationship with the Worcester County District Attorney and statewide. So, you know, those are kind of extra funding sources that he can bring in, and not necessarily go to dedicated personnel, but certainly targeted personnel, targeted items, you know, capital items that, you know, the town, you know, does not have to pay. So, I mean, I think, and the fire chief, you know, maybe to a lesser degree, certainly does that as well. So at least at those 2 very significant departments, we're very fortunate to have those kinds of individuals there that aren't relying solely on the Milford taxpayer dollar.
So, I mean, when either of the chiefs come, you know, I've gotten the comments, why don't you guys grill these guys? It's like, well, wait a minute, in the subcommittee, they do. But these guys are straight shooters. I mean, they don't come in asking for things they don't need.
No, not
you know,
at all.
When the chief comes and says, I'm going to have to buy breathing apparatus. Mine are starting to get tired. I'm trying to get a grant. If I don't get the grant, well, of course, what are you going to do? You're not going to send one of our firefighters in with substandard gear.
Yeah, and I mean, both of those departments, through their leaders, have earned that credibility over years. You know, it's a different story if someone, you know, new off the street comes in, takes the position and comes in and all of a sudden starts asking for this, that, and the other thing. You know, you sit back and say, wait a minute, you know, this is a new guy on board, I'm not real clear about these things. But, you know, the police chief, you know, he's been here, I think, about 15 years plus. I mean, he's earned that credibility. The police department, I think, has earned that credibility. The fire chief, even though he's the new guy on board, he's really not.
No,
because
he's 2 Rev 2.
you know, he's really not, because he was the deputy for so long and he's been in the department for so long. So we really didn't miss a beat, you know, switching from one Dewey to another in the head of the,
Oh, and we
fire
laughed with
chief.
Tom O'Laughlin where, what was the year he left about $3.80 unspent? You know, when you hand him a few $1 million budget, and by the end of the year, you're really joking, but it's
Yeah.
pocket change that he's managed right to the penny.
Yes, yes, they do a great job, both departments, and you know, those are key major departments for the town, so we're very, very fortunate to have them in Milford.
What do you think? There's a magic about Milford with the way town hall, selectmen, work with all the department heads. Because I think people forget that you control maybe a third. Could it be a third of the budget?
Well, it's certainly not half, you know, I mean, if you look at the, you know, the $91 million plus, I mean, I think a good 50% of that is through the school department.
Well, when you put in the mortgages and the health bill, it's
Yeah.
62% of our
Sure.
budget
Sure,
is school.
yep,
Then you have other elected officials.
yep.
So at most, you're controlling a third. But somehow you have to
Probably.
influence
Yeah,
all of it.
yeah, yeah.
What makes Milford so special? Because you never see, I mean, I read the paper and this school department is at war with, you know, this budgeting authority and this one won't accept this. We don't see that in Milford.
No, we don't, and I hope that continues. And, you know, I've been on the board for 15 years, so I would like to think that I have at least a partial degree of responsibility for, you know, that kind of an atmosphere. You know, from a selectman point of view, you know, what certainly I try to do, if there's an appointment coming up and we're interviewing, you know, I just try to find the right person, you know, quality-wise, intelligence, you know, qualifications rather, intelligence, attitude, you know, someone who's, I think, is really going to fit into, you know, the culture at Town Hall and be willing to work with the other department heads. And I think if you recall, you know, generally, obviously more often than not, we hit on that. Well, once we didn't, and you know, we had a town treasurer who, you know, I didn't think was the right fit for the town, but she was here for a very brief
I said,
period.
did we? I think when I blinked,
Yeah.
she was in and out before I even got to meet her.
It didn't work out, and that's, you know, no reflection on that individual. But, you know, the vibe I had during those interviews and the reason why I voted against her, I just didn't think it was a match. I just didn't think it was a match, and it turned out that it was not. But, you know, I think we rebounded from that very well, and, you know, we've got a good quality individual in there now, and I think we're ready to move forward. But I think it's the key in terms of finding good team players who are also very, very qualified.
Well, you know, it's funny because being in the bio side, when the body reacts to a foreign substance and can't ingest it, it's called a foreign body reaction. And it seems like you do get a foreign body reaction, that if somebody comes in who doesn't fit the culture, it's not to say it's a bad person or whatever, but could really cause, if that person stayed for a long time, that could have been miserable for a lot of departments.
There are many pitfalls that we avoided in that situation that we've just referenced, you know, legal and otherwise. And I think it was a credit to town council, the way it was handled. I think it's a credit to the town administrator, who handled it very well. And the exit on that particular situation could have been much more worse.
So now, I'm worried about the budget on Beacon Hill,
Oh,
because
got to get someone else to sit in the chair to talk about
well,
that
yeah,
one.
but if you know, Uncle Charlie doesn't do it without hurting local aid, if we really lost a lot of local aid, are there any programs you can think of that would be first on the chopping block?
I don't really look to, deal in hypotheticals. My philosophy at the school department, whenever you had to scale back on a budget, was always direct services to the students last. Obviously, on the town side, it's the same type of philosophy, direct services to the taxpayers last. But there's a whole bunch of other areas and contingencies that you can try to consider if local aid is reduced. Not that I would say you would tap into a stabilization or anything like that, but it's something that I've experienced before. If you remember, going back to the early 90s, we had about 3 or 4 years of negative free cash to the town, which a lot of the people who are now involved in town government, they weren't around then. I don't know that they can even conceive of that kind of an atmosphere. But regardless, during that time period, we were still able to get the Stacy School project up and running. That was a $14 million project, and we got that done in 1995. Miraculous that it was done in years of negative free cash. So, there's always ways to manage things, and I think it just requires actively being involved and working very hard to try to look at all alternatives.
Well, I remember, was it 2003, when, a lot of the state budget was, Romney kind of balanced it on our backs. And like you say, it was not a pleasant experience to go to somebody and say.
Was that the year of the 9C cuts?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's very distressing, because you get a 9C cut, as you know, that's a cut that happens mid-year after you've already budgeted, after you've hired personnel based upon your budget, after you've maybe purchased equipment. And I think those hit around March, which was pretty.
But we didn't even have a whole half year to deal.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty much, 2/3 into the fiscal year. So that was very, very difficult. But, I think the team approach that you've talked about was very, very important in putting that together and coming up with a strategy and dealing with it, which we did.
It was amazing because, people saying we can't. It's like, okay, now we got that emotion out. I know we can't. I know it's impossible. So now how are we going to get it done? But, you had to convince people that, you had to lay off 1.6 people for every one that you wanted an impact. Because people don't understand that the town pays dollar for dollar unemployment.
Sure.
So even if you lay somebody off, you still got 40-odd%.
Sure. Yeah, it was not an easy situation.
Another not easy situation everybody talks about, Middle School East. Any thoughts you want to share?
I don't know if you want my thoughts on Middle School East. I mean, I was, going back 10+ years, maybe even longer than that. I was really the proponent to do a modified renovation to Woodland School, similar to what was done at Brookside. I was in favor of renovating Middle School East. Now, if you remember, back at that time, there was 72% state reimbursement. And the numbers have changed scale-wise, but the analysis that I did, and I submitted it to the school department at that time, we could have renovated both buildings cheaper than building the new building that we're building now. Much like my kids, no one listened to me, so it's gone on, and that's fine. I think the committee's done a great job. The building that they're putting together is remarkable. It's going to be a great asset for the town of Milford. Now, you're left with what I thought we were going to be left with, a building where I think the school department really has a need for that. So, the school department still technically has legal control over that building. However, there's this other ad hoc committee that was put together to try to study it and I guess come up with some ideas. So it'll be interesting to see how those two committees
Brian,
intersect.
Even if they wanted to walk away, I've had this discussion with a few school committee members, because they said, we could hand the keys to the selectmen. I said, great, but you can't hand 62% of the cost, because they're still going to be paying for it.
Well, I guess in that scenario, it depends on what they're going to be, doing for another gymnasium. What are they going to do for their
But
other
Brian,
space?
let's say they were going to do nothing with the building,
Okay.
and they just say, Brian, Will, Bill, it's your problem. Okay, so it costs us what, 300 grand to keep that building? You can't do like Stacy where you board it up and let it rot. So you got 300 grand or so. Well, when we do the budgets, you take, the health,
Yeah.
the mortgages,
Yeah.
the bonds, which
Yeah.
technically, that would come right off the top. The school gets 62% of what's left. So if you take that off the top,
Yeah.
they're getting 62% less. So one way or another, they're going to be shouldering a lot of expense.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a problem, no question. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what the, ad hoc study committee comes back with. But, like I've said, I don't know that the school department can go forward and function effectively without portions of that building.
Well, I think about the high school. First class out, I was in it was 74. We really haven't done any expansion on the high school since 74.
Well, actually, if you think about it, there has. If you remember, there was the garage area.
We've used the space.
Yes.
The
Yes.
kindergarten,
Yes.
the
Preschool's there
preschool,
now.
Parks Department got moved.
Yep, that all got out. So they've
But-
they've created more space, more usable educational space within the building, and I think they've done that with a number of classrooms too, and that sort of thing. So they've expanded without necessarily expanding the footprint of
And
the
that's,
building.
I'm looking at, okay, they've kind of maximized all we had the Parks Department in there.
Yeah.
Told Mike Brashani, you got to get out, we need the space.
Yeah.
They've kind of maximized everything, but I don't know that there's any more unused space in large quantities that they can.
I don't think that there is. I haven't been in the high school in a while. My youngest is out of the high school. With the security system, I couldn't even get in there when she was going to school there. It's like, trying to get into CIA headquarters. But, I think I would assume it's probably, to the max, sure.
So that's what I'm thinking. My dream would be somebody comes in and says, I'd like to buy Middle School East, and I'll put it back on the tax rolls. But I don't see, one, how that's feasible, because no parking. But two, I don't know that as a town. I think of the town hall. Since Paul Revere was there, I don't think we've expanded the building.
Well, you talk about overcrowding, that's an area that there is a problem. In fact, the financial department is moving things around to accommodate, the benefits administrator. Now you're going to establish a technology department. I know there are other departments that are kind of, hemmed in, boxed in. Storage area is a big problem. So, yes, there are requirements for space at Town Hall. Whether or not that's going to merit the cost that it's going to be to renovate and bring up Middle School East, with Milford paying 100 cents on the dollar now, that's a big issue. That's going to be a big issue.
I don't know what you're going to do with the building.
That was part of the argument that I had said 10 to 15 years ago when they came forward with this plan. And we had members, coming forward and said, we can sell it. We'll get $2, $3, $4 million for it. I never thought that was a reality. So, now the rubber's hitting the road. And, yes, we're going to have a beautiful edifice at Woodland School. It's going to be wonderful. But like you said, okay, now what do we do with this building right on Main Street?
Mm-hmm.
Where the gymnasium is a key and integral part of the school department. I went up to, one of the school administrators, and, this was about a year or so ago, maybe 2 years, I think, before Woodland hit the ground. And I said, you really need that gymnasium? Oh, no, we don't need it. I said, do you understand that during basketball season, you have 6 teams that have to practice every day? Oh, no, we just got a girls and a boys. I said, you have a varsity, you have a JV, you have a freshman, boys and girls. That's 6 teams. Now, you're spreading them around on 3 gyms, Stacy, the high school, and Middle East. If you go down to 2 gyms, you're going to have some team that's going to be starting practice at 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Well,
And it was like a light bulb went off, and it's like, oh my God, I didn't know. So I mean,
the problem
I don't know that things have been particularly thought out throughout that
The problem I
process.
have is people say, well, look at Woodland. You're going to have a new gym. That's as big or better than Middle School East.
Oh, I don't think it is. My understanding was it's an elementary gym.
No, I went up there, looked pretty, but even if it was,
I didn't know
I
that
thought it
it's
was
the same.
full. When they gave us a tour, I asked, they said it's a
Okay.
full court.
Okay.
But I sat there
Well,
and said,
then that might solve the problem, then,
the
sure.
problem I have is, well, you remember when the kids were playing, when your daughter was playing
Yeah.
soccer and all,
Yeah,
even if you brought on another gym,
yeah,
I don't know that that satisfies the demand.
absolutely, yeah.
You know, there's so many of our kids, it's not like when we were kids, I know everybody makes fun of saying, you're just saying that. No,
Yeah.
we played outside.
On the street, or
And
yeah, yeah.
now everything is organized.
Right.
Right, wrong, or
Right.
indifferent.
Right,
I can't imagine
yeah,
that if there's a full basketball court somewhere inside, Lenny Morcone wouldn't fill it every hour of the day.
yeah. Oh, no question about it. And I mean, the youth center, we're going to have a beautiful gym there, but that's got its own programs. And I don't know that that's going to be able to accommodate on a regular basis, your school programs.
Well, no, but I look at the youth center gym as defensive.
Yeah,
It's not going to put extra demand
right,
because you're going to have space to take care of all of their programs,
right.
and you'll always have a little bit extra in there.
Sure, sure.
So to me, that doesn't eliminate the need. It just keeps you from making it worse.
Sure, sure. Yeah, yeah,
You know, the same thing we've had the argument about fields.
yeah,
You know, here we're back to where when you started down the road of we need a new high school field.
yeah, yeah,
It was all timing.
yeah,
There are a number of us that said, great idea, but
yeah,
you got to wait. When we put the money towards the youth center, we had to tell the Parks Department, there's no way we can come up with $2 million easily
yeah,
for a new field.
yeah,
And they've agreed that what we're going to try and do is every year that we have a nice surplus.
right,
So we've put away $400,000 in the long-range capital.
yeah,
Hopefully you have 2-3 more years like this and
Yeah.
we can turf a field.
sure.
And the
Sure.
same argument came up when they said, well, if Woodland's going to give, because I understand now it's going to be a full field.
I'm
was
not
told.
sure, yeah, yeah.
I hope.
I thought it was going to be a
I
full-
thought it was going to be a 3/4, and they said, no, it's a full.
Oh, yeah, I thought it was a full multi-purpose.
So now the question comes out, do we need to re-turf another field? Personally, I don't think it's an absolute need, but the programs just keep getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I mean, the field project I was involved in, and, I mean, the condition of the high school field. It was an embarrassment, not to mention a safety hazard, not to mention almost an impossibility for a elderly or disabled person to get to that area. So, that whole area just cried out for renovation. And, I think the project, I'm still, believe it or not, there's a few little things that we've got to wind down on it, but I've been kind of distracted and haven't been able to, bring that one to total fruition. But, by and large, it's really developed into almost a college-style athletic campus. When you're there, the last year when my daughter played softball her senior year, it was just wonderful to be there in April and May and look over to the left and see the tennis going on, look down at the track, see the track going on, kids on the field where they're practicing lacrosse. I mean, so much was happening all in that general area. And I remember getting that feeling when we used to go to Shrewsbury. And you'll remember Shrewsbury had one of the nicer new schools, and it had that open athletic complex in the back, so you could be watching a soccer game or a baseball game or something, and you feel like you're all part of the
I
action.
only wish we had their field house.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they have for that, but I mean, in terms of the fields, it was just absolutely ideal. It was absolutely ideal.
It was unbelievable the same way, Brian. You walk in, because we would go there for the Special Olympics basketball.
Yep.
And you saw the wrestling rooms, the weight rooms. It just was an unbelievable feeling.
Sure, sure.
You know?
Yeah, Yeah, so those are the kind of facilities that are there. So, it's nice to have that in Milford now. You drive by, we just cleared the whole area out. We brought the grades up, leveled it, and of course the artificial surface, which, you talk about the need for fields, and this was, what we had talked about from day one. You use this artificial surface, it's like building 10 fields. Because you could go 24/7 on that thing if you wanted to.
Well, that was a big argument where they said it's going to save all this money. And when I looked at the numbers, I said, it's not going to save any money, but it gives you 2.5 fields use.
Sure.
And it gives you almost infinite when you compare it to a rainy day.
And it didn't really, well, I mean, in terms of the saving the money, it would if you projected over a certain period of time and we were doing what we should have been doing to maintain the grass field.
But see, that was the key. When Mike said every so many years you got to resod.
Oh, every season, really. It was like,
he said like every year or two. And I said,
Yes.
Mike, what was the last time you did it?
Yeah.
6 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was the problem. It just wasn't getting done on
It's
that
not
natural
saving
surface.
us actual money.
Yeah.
Now, you can argue that the kids deserve better than playing in a rock pit. But now, to me, and the reason I like the idea of resodding or returfing a field, it's 2.5 fields.
Exactly, sure.
And
Yeah.
if it rains, okay,
Yeah.
you wait an hour.
Yep. Or you can play right on the rain.
Yeah.
I'm sure your daughter played many soccer games
in the rain.
In the rain. I mean, I remember Jack playing football games. At that point, we didn't have the Milford field, but I remember there was a game in Franklin. It was raining like heck, and he was on the artificial turf, and not one kid slipped. And the game just went on. I don't think they minded it. We, the parents, didn't really have a whole lot of fun,
No.
we were kind of a mess, but I mean, in terms of the actual playability, it was just great.
The youth center,
Yes.
worth the money?
Oh, no question about it. Absolutely.
I mean, people look and they say $5 million. I mean, I choked on $5 million. I joked and said, you could have bought Milford when we were kids, $5 million, they would have thrown in Hopedale. So it's a ton of money.
Yeah.
But if somebody just asks you what I did, is it worth it?
There's no question about it. First of all, we got the building in 2007 for $1, and Jerry Moody actually did give the state $1. So we invested absolutely nothing into it. To be honest with you, when the National Guard had it, it was built in 1911. I don't think that anything had ever been invested in that building. So, if you amortize, $5 million over 100+ years, it doesn't really cost you a whole lot of money. Now, the thing that you need to remember is the outside shell of that building is 8-inch thick granite block, Milford pink granite block, and we asked, the engineers to give us a cost estimate if it was even possible to build a building like that today with the square footage, because you're talking over 33,000 square feet. There's a lot of room in there to do a lot of different things. The cost would be over $30 million. And if you wanted to make it with a veneer or something less than that, it would be upwards of $15 million. So, you can't build a building like that anymore.
Brad, money aside, the kids, is it worth it?
Well, I think there's two ways to look at that. First of all, that building is a key part of our history. It's a key part of Milford. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us, really, to preserve our history and to retrofit that history and maybe convert it into today's usage. So I can't think of anything more appropriate than an armory to be kind of retrofitted for today's needs to develop our young people.
But that's what we did with Stacy.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you think about it, from a logical return on investment, the best thing we should have done is raised it and put up an ugly steel and glass building. But it's part of Milford.
It's part of Milford. It's part of Milford. And again, Stacy's another good example. You couldn't build that today. And okay, yes, we renovated it, but thinking back, like I said, I remember the cost of that was about $14 million, and we got 72% reimbursement from the state. So we really got a lot of bang for our buck. And now from that point, the maintenance, the upkeep really has been minimal. I mean, that structure will be there long after we're gone.
And I guess the question I'm asking is, I don't think a lot of people understand where the youth center fits in. Because we've had this discussion saying, We have kids who play football. We built them a football stadium. We have kids who play soccer. We renovated the soccer pitch. Girls who play softball. Kids who play tennis. And we've always taken care of the different groups. Weren't we just doing the same thing? Just taking a group of kids who are no more special, no less special than all the others?
Well, the thing is the youth center serves a lot of different needs. Primarily, they have the youth programs in the afternoon after school for kids who aren't involved in music or theater or
Just
sports.
another group of Milford kids.
And, they're a group of Milford kids, and they can go there and be a part of a team, be a part of a family, and really develop and grow. That's only part of what they do there. Then at night, you've got a lot of the community league teams coming in, whether it's basketball, wrestling, softball. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on there, not to mention your other groups, your Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. So it's a whole host of community activities in addition to the youth program that comes in. And also, it serves as a supplement for your high school teams. They'll come down there, they'll practice, they'll work out, that kind of thing. And with the expanded and updated facilities, the opportunities are just as far as your imagination can take you. When I started to work on the senior center, and that was back probably about 15 years ago, if you remember, the old senior center was that, 2-room St. Mary's.
I was going to say, we didn't have a senior center.
That old St. Mary's classroom, and there were 7 parking spaces. And lots of times those 7 weren't even filled. And it was a tough sell to tell people that we needed a new senior center. Why? That's good enough. What's wrong with that? So what we did was, and I don't know if you remember this, but we organized a bus trip. And we had the Friends of the Seniors charter a bus. We went to Danvers, Beverly, and Saugus. We took 55 seniors in the community. We had the bus filled. And we took them out there and said, look, this is what other communities do for their senior citizens. And it was just amazing, the effect. Those people came back and said, my goodness, you should see what these other towns have. They have large rooms to gather. They have dance. They have stores. They have a chiropractor. They have hairstylists. They have so many different services. And from there, the momentum just grew, and we were able to come forward with the senior center. That building is cranking all the time. There's so much stuff. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we couldn't even envision that what it was going to be like. That's going to be the same thing with the youth center.
Technology.
Yep.
We're finally looking at bringing Milford up to where it should be. Thoughts?
I mean, I think we're in good shape on the municipal end, which is really, the only thing that the Board of Selectmen can deal with. The school department has their own needs, and I think that they're looking at things in a certain way. But, the evolution to get where we've been has been difficult. This technology director, I think that position was flawed from the very start. I mean, if you'll remember, that came in 2010, and it was a sharing of the school technology director. It just proved to be an untenuous type arrangement. I think that the town administrator, Rick Villani, has done a great job along with the finance director in terms of coordinating consultant use and upgrading all of the town facilities. The police department and the fire department on their own, under the direction of the chiefs, I think have done a great job in consolidating their technology. So right now, the municipal end of the town, I feel very comfortable with the level of technology that we have.
It seems like you're getting the right people. I'm impressed with this new guy, Andy.
Oh, yes, yep.
He just seems to, he puts his head down, and I've been a challenge, as I always have been with the others. When they talked about spending money on 18 tablets, because we'd have this new system, and we would not have to have documents flying. And I remember the last fellow when he said, I could have you up and running within an hour. I reached out, handed him my laptop, said, our meeting's 2 hours. I'll see you at the end. Andy, the other day, when he told me that the new system is in place and he's ready to recommend we buy tablets, I did the same thing. I said, show me it working on my device. It's nice it works on yours. but I'm the one and 15 others
Sure, yeah,
that have to make this thing work. And sure
Yeah.
enough,
yeah.
within about 15, 20 minutes, he was showing me email and
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, to get to that level, there was a lot of work that had to be done in terms of infrastructure. And, you know, I think the town personnel worked very well with World Band to get us to that level, to get us to that point.
well, I think Lonnie has been steady.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know, I mean, he just,
I mean, we've relied upon, you know, his expertise, we've relied upon his services, we relied upon his report to kind of give us the guidebook as to what needs to be done to get us where we're at. So, you know, I don't know why we wouldn't continue that relationship. And getting back to one of the challenges that we talked about, I think that's an area where we've got to be very careful. We don't want to get giddy financially. We
Sure.
don't want to go out and buy the shiny newest, you know, thing when it's probably not necessary.
well, when you think about it,
That's
and
kind of
you
the way
hear
I
you
look
got
at it.
50 users. That's a lot, but it really isn't. And, you know, you got Andy that has 2-3 hours a day of routine, you know, break-fix stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And the rest now he's spending consolidating servers and streamlining it.
Yeah,
So I'm really impressed. I mean, on the school side, we're about to put in a $300,000 E-rate, which hopefully, I mean, it's supposed to be 67% reimbursable. So they're putting in 900,000 or 700,000, somewhere in that range, of equipment.
sure.
I gotta believe that with a brand new Woodland, you know, and $600,000-700,000 worth of hardware,
Yep.
I would hope we'd be up to, you know, code.
I would think, I mean, I don't know, you know, it's just so difficult for someone like me, who I'm not a big technology fan in the first place. It just changes so fast.
Well, that's the problem. Is
Everything
everybody
just
looks at
changes so
computers saying,
fast.
"We just bought them 3-4 years ago."
Right, right.
Yeah, we
Everything just
did. And
changes
now
so
they're
fast.
gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, with all the upgrades, the programs we've done, what do you see the next big challenge?
In terms of technology,
Infrastructure, technology.
well, I mean, I think you probably said it, you know, the middle school east building. That's probably your next infrastructure challenge, unquestionably. You know, when you look at all of the other town infrastructure, I think we're in remarkable shape. I always think that we could, you know, do better with our parks, you know, in terms of Pheno Field, you know, that kind of stuff. I mean, you know, right now it's good. I think it ought to be great. And I know Representative Fernandez has been very helpful in terms of securing state money. I know the parks directors are putting together a plan to try to make the most use of that money. So I think that's going to be a really nice, nice event. But in terms of infrastructure, yeah, I think your middle school east is your next obstacle, and it's going to be a tough one now.
We're always going to have, I mean, Mark, Shane, and I will go to war this year. It's time because Pheno Field Pool is coming up again.
Okay, yeah,
You know, and Mark, I cannot say he's wrong when he presents just a logical argument as to why you should close Pheno Field and just take over Casey. It'd be a lot cheaper. But then I look at Pheno Field, that pool. It's where we all grew up.
oh, absolutely. I remember going
and
there.
I'll admit it, I
I
cannot.
remember going there.
When you swam across the deep end,
Yeah.
you finally were, you know, you made it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I always joke and say I think most of us got our first kiss behind Votolato Field.
Oh, I don't know about that, but
You know,
I remember going down there. Sure, sure.
so you know, there's certain things that, you know, I've always believed that if you're really good on 90% of the budget, you know, there's certain things you can leave to emotion.
Well, I mean, you know, the Pheno Field Pool, I mean, as you said, that's a huge part of the community, not only historically, but present day. I mean, there are many, many people, if you go down there in the summertime, that use that and depend upon that, you know, for their children and older folks or whatever. So that's a key part of the town. But, you know, getting back to Mark, and we really should make reference, you know, Mark, you know, he's been around a while, and he's, I think, done an excellent job with the Finance Committee through his years, and it's not an easy job. And Mark is like, you know, sometimes we'll be going at each other, and you know, I can't stay angry at the guy. I really can't.
No.
It's just, he's just,
I
I think he just does a good
worked
job.
with him for 4 years, and if I had to go into a foxhole,
Yep.
There's nobody I would want covering my back. Because I know if I caught a bullet, it's because he's dead. But, you know, my point was there's certain things that we're going to do.
Yeah.
And you do it because it's Milford. You know, not having Phenofield there. I mean, it has trees. I can't get emotional.
Well, I mean, again, you know, I look at that kind of a service as something that the taxpayer deserves. I look at the leaf pickup as something the taxpayer deserves. I look at the July 4th fireworks as something the taxpayer deserves. So, you know, you try to, you know, target these specific services, programs, infrastructure to really try to provide, you know, the best lifestyle that you can for the taxpayers of Milford.
And, you know, we always had, Aldo and I always went at it over the fireworks. Because in his heart, he looked and said, that pays for a third of a teacher. And I couldn't argue. But somehow, again, that's one of those little emotional things, going down to the dump of Plains Park and being with neighbors. Just walking around, I mean, John Accavelli giving me the hot dog when Sharon's not looking. You know, he lets me buy a hot dog because if she sees me, she'll yell at me. Keith Guitars, you know, that whole crowd.
It's a huge part of being a community. And you know, I mean, you know, in today's world, even though there is Facebook and social media, it seems as though that people are more isolated than ever before. They work in cubicles and you don't have those community gatherings. Well, the July 4th gathering is one of those community gatherings. And I think it's very, very significant.
The bus service.
Mm-hmm.
The only downside I've been able to figure out is how to pay for it.
And that's something that I would like to get before your committee to start working on. We've got a couple of different avenues that we're looking at. Harold Rhodes has been a tremendous, tremendous asset on this and has done a very nice job in putting together a grant application through the charitable branch of the Milford Regional Medical Center. That would be for $75,000. Representative Fernandez is very in tune to this. I talked to him about legislation he's looking to file that would, you know, to try to simplify it, would in essence cut the cost in half, allow for state reimbursement to the town of Milford. So now something that's $250,000, you know, might only be about $50,000. And, you know, that doesn't preclude going back to MWRTA and, you know, seeing if that number can be sharpened a little. So you know,
but eventually it would be us, right? Eventually the grants run out.
Possibly. But you don't know what's going to occur at the state level. But, you know, this isn't the type of service that you're married to from now until the end of time. So you might have it for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years even. If the decision is that it's not working out, that it's not needed, then you don't have to.
What do you see the big benefit?
I think the big benefit really is being driven by Milford Regional Medical Center. You know, they really need this service to get patients there, get employees there. Beyond that, I know that there are seniors and homebound people that the senior center is not able to accommodate. We've just got one van that can only go so far. There are a number of people who, you know, are unable to drive, unable to get out of their house, and public transportation, I think, would be a great asset to them. Look, you know, this isn't a new foreign concept, you know. I mean, it's essentially being done everywhere, and of course the move is to try to encourage more public transportation in your urban centers to try to take cars off the road. I don't know that it will get to that level, but we've got to try. So I think if Milford really wants to be, you know, an economic engine for the surrounding area, I mean, if we want to recognize the fact that we really are a mini urban center, to not have a service like public transportation, I think is shameful.
Well, years ago when they brought it up the first time and I asked the question, what's the benefit? And it was explained to me that now people who can't drive to Framingham could get on the bus in front of the Memorial Hall and go to Framingham to shop. And I got to admit, I was confused. I said, so you want me to take Milford taxpayer dollars to fund a vehicle for having people not shop in Milford? That made no sense to me.
Yeah, and this proposal is not that. This proposal is basically a fixed route within the town of
Right.
Milford. And it's going to hook up with that type of route that could take you to Framingham, it could take you off to Hudson or Marlboro, it could take you into Boston, but it's more than that. It's a fixed route in and around the
Well,
town of
my
Milford.
understanding is this really is more Gazinta than Gazauta. You know, it's really for
Yeah.
people inside to be able to
Yes.
get around,
Yes, absolutely.
and for people to get
Absolutely.
to the medical center from surrounding towns.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, when the Chamber of Commerce comes forward and indicates a fairly consistent response, favorable to it, when your largest employer talks to you about it and said, this is really something that we think is a good idea, I think it's incumbent upon a responsible public official to look at it, to do everything you can possibly do, and bring it to the body that's going to ultimately make the decision, the town meeting.
Right. But again, to me, we're voting on a $250,000 item. If we can get it funded for 3 years, great. But if it works, you're not going to shut it off. You know, so.
Nor should you.
Right.
Nor should you. I mean, I think if it works, I think it's a service that the community needs to offer. You know, again, I mean, I think, you know, if you're going to be a mini urban center, which Milford is, you know, you really need to have public
Well, if
transportation.
it really does take care of our elders, you know, our handicapped, if it really takes care of, we built a youth center to take care of a group that we said is no more special, no less special. We built a football complex for a group that, again, no more, no less special. This just seems like another group.
I think it's just a question of maintaining your infrastructure and dealing with these essential parts of your town. You don't want to be the community that ignores the school for 20, 30 years.
Right.
You don't want to be the community that ignores the sewage treatment plant, the fire station, and Milford has never done that. So we've always maintained our infrastructure very well, and I think that serves the residents of Milford very well.
And on that, my next question, Brian, I'm from Milford. Why
Yes.
should I vote for you?
Well, I've already told you. I think very simply, and I don't know how much time you have, I need to wind down the clock or anything, but you know, I've been here, I've worked hard, I'm very interested in the issues that affect the town. You certainly know how I feel on a particular issue. I do everything I can do to try to get as much information out to the voters, whether it's the voters at large or the town meeting voters, and I want to continue to do the job.
As always, I never ask you to vote for any specific candidate in any specific race, but I will beg you, as always, get to know the candidates. Find the person who you feel is most like you, who has your values, who'll take care of Milford, our kids, our parents, and eventually us. And then most important, on April 5th, get out and vote, because that's where the rubber hits the road, as you said. That's where you really do have a chance to influence our future. So to our 6 loyal viewers, thank you for joining us. May God bless, and may tomorrow be a better night than tonight, and hopefully see you on April 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Thank you very much.